Don't nobody want to talk about Aaliyah. I'll let Dame Dash talk about it. See, that's his business.
I remember having a conversation with Aaliyah, and I was like, yo, you know, tell me what happened. And she was like, she just couldn't. What you want me to do? And I just leave it alone.
Right.
Don't act like nothing. It causes me too much pain. I got a girl that your man.
It's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
And and I tell you, when you gonna still work with him, what you gonna feel? So what you think I felt?
Exactly.
So I'm human, bro.
Right.
That he liked as well. 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 Right?
Right.
And then went on a tour with him.
Was there any dissension between you and Jay because of that? Because
of course.
They made a song together called Not Guilty.
Cut to 2000, right? Once we got cool with Homegirl,
right,
I knew everything.
Right.
Right?
And that's when you stop fucking with it.
And that's that. So you asking me, what do you do when somebody does that? You get the fuck out of Dodge and you start a whole new brand.
Right.
And you let everybody think you're broke.
Right.
Because you don't want the buckshot or none of that karma.
But these bitches in my business come me out to choosing violence. If you see me out in public, you don't know me, keep it silent. In the bedroom, I be screaming, but outside I keep it quiet. You don't stay on me.
Welcome to Prima Donna News, where we give unbiased commentary about trending topics, as well as expose the propaganda surrounding Robert Kelly. Make sure to hit the like button, share the content, and ensure all notifications are on all in order to get all notifications from our channel.
There's a lot of things that Dame Dash has said on these platforms that have had people looking at him sideways. So imagine when he participated in Surviving R. Kelly and he spun his little story. And a lot of people like to skip around the tragic demise of Aaliyah as much as they like to scandalize her legacy. You see, a lot of people skip the fact that it was said that Dame Dash was rushing her to get on this treacherous plane that ended her life, as other people collected these life insurance policies that clearly didn't go to her mother. Now, for me on the outside looking in, it didn't take a genius to recognize why it was necessary for people to keep latching on to these stories and how they feel things happen between Robert Kelly and Aaliyah. Didn't change the reasonable doubt that I gave when people realized that this janky-ass document that was sent to Vibe magazine and scandalized for all these years did not prove that an authentic marriage occurred. And even if one did occur, it didn't change the fact that people couldn't prove any sexual relationships occurred, that people wanted to manifest and prove this history of this man abusing minor girls. Imagine my surprise after I've documented all of the missing pieces that are missing out of these storylines, and even that failed to take the stand, as they put this clerk on the stand that only confirmed my suspicions about the janky ass marriage certificate that people wanted to make so real that even, as I said, if people forge or bribe an official as the government tried to claim, why wouldn't you prosecute the person that allegedly did the bribery? Why can't you substantiate in court the actual bribery that you allege? Where was the payment? What was the compensation? All of these questions still remain unanswered. But yet, the government was allowed to use such a questionable witness such as Demetrius Smith talking about his janky-ass plan that he derived with others who are still not being prosecuted. So let's make this point. Considering now it's the anniversary of this lady's passing, how many people are going to put the energy into finding out exactly what was the reason when they want to spin these narratives now that, oh, she was possibly drugged, oh, this happened, oh, that happened, and everybody's focus at the time was still being spun in circles around what they think happened between her and Robert Kelly that she vehemently denied while she was here, which would give people the impression why they needed her out the way.
Vante Cunningham. She was friends with the late singer Aaliyah and testified that she witnessed Kelly in a sexual act with the young music star when Aaliyah was underage.
Nobody ever listened. They said we were lying, we were making it up, we just wanted to be famous, we were looking for some money.
You were quiet for so long. And now you're kind of like one of the voices of this group of women.
Being silent afforded him the ability to do this over and over again. I had to speak for Aaliyah. I had to speak for those who were not strong enough to speak for themselves. And I had to speak for myself.
Now, if you started to give your opinions and not take a deep dive and look at all the moving pieces from these characters and the motivating factors that these people had to corroborate the stories they put on these platforms for years, it don't take a genius as to why I was able to remain adamant in giving reasonable doubt for the specific ways that the government wanted to build on these so-called predicate acts that formed their janky-ass RICO. So when it came to the first act, which was bribery, and the person that was all over these platforms with his story times, given the fact that he's not credible, it should be obvious that people could have put more energy into the facts instead of doing all the extra meddling they engaged in when it came to these specific witnesses, then act surprised when the government alleges that Robert Kelly was out here trying to intimidate or coerce these witnesses, when in fact it is my beliefs it was the government and all of these bad actors that was doing the intimidating and coercion, considering a lot of these stories have been disputed long ago before these people were empowered to feel like they could congregate and collude together to get their stories out here, pile them up, and manufacture it into this so-called history of bad acts that led into this RICO. When you deep dive into the characters behind these voices and you look at the affiliations and see how they skipped all that when they was given their story times, it should be no surprise why I was able to put that information out there and just see how people would react to solid information that they could build on instead of making up conspiracies that made absolutely no sense, that would not help vindicate the false charges against Robert Kelly, and did not prove why I stood adamant that you can't accuse people of victim shaming these so-called bad act witnesses because they don't believe the stories they were empowered to give. So let's take a step back. With all those people that claim that they were so adamant to get justice, why wasn't that same token given to Aaliyah in the suspicious matters surrounding her demise? Why was it necessary to watch these individuals meddle so deeply under the guise that they were doing so much to help Robert Kelly that absolutely made no sense if you went and read the paperwork, considering a lot of them didn't want to address the specific charges associated with Aaliyah? At the end of the day, when they have made Robert Kelly such the monster, it's not going to change the suspicious accusations that have been waged when it comes to Aaliyah's passing, and it's not going to change the fact that Robert Kelly didn't bribe nobody. So when it came to sharing these clips from people like Javante Cunningham and Dame Dash, it was clearly just to document the fact and why I didn't believe the words coming out their mouth. Because clearly they had motivating factors and hurt feelings behind the stories they pushed. But does that mean that a man should be sitting in jail for 30 years because the things that they said didn't check out, but yet they were allowed to get on the stand and perjure themselves with no repercussion? Many people went to that trial and saw some of the same discrepancies that I documented, but couldn't keep their focus on that. So when it's all said and done, what are your thoughts when it comes to how they scandalized Aaliyah's legacy, talked around how they claimed that it was so suspicious how she passed, and all of these bad act characters come on these platforms piggybacking off of the stories they want to give on her behalf? The government can use a deceased Jane Doe, even though this obviously isn't a murder trial, and use her story to put another individual who was obviously saying that he bribed an individual, even though if you go back to all of his different stories, that isn't what he said on these platforms, especially when he mentioned having a connect at the DHS office. other people talking about these food stamps, and it being my belief that why in the entire hell would a sensation such as Aaliyah even back then need to go and apply for some food stamps, and why wouldn't her parents be behind that? It's a lot of questions that would lead to fraud that would clearly show you why I don't believe bribery even occurred, as they had this man on the stand testifying to it, putting the blame on Robert Kelly. But hey, that was my perception. When I gave people these witnesses that were going to be on the stand, they wanted to mislead the public and say this person and that person was testifying. Take the focus off the actual charge of bribery, which we know for a fact Robert Kelly had nothing to do with. Even the witness testified Robert Kelly had nothing to do with. And yet, that was part of the Predicate Act that was used to form a janky-ass manufactured RICO. And though some of us demonstrated why we believe the biased judge who was selected, and Donna, was being fueled by this Me Too movement and her decisions and ability to shut down certain things that the so-called defense was trying to put in, even though to this day I will stand on the fact that we all know that this man's defense was very much ineffective, to the fact that this same judge asked this man about potential conflicts, even though at that time they were adamant that this trial was going to proceed. So when we heard R. Kelly come out here and give information that we already witnessed ourselves, that we documented, that had Tasha K and a lot of these bad act witnesses on these platforms exposing just how janky and corrupt these federal agents are willing to dive into in order to manufacture their case and get the conviction they needed. The same way that they could give the illusion that R. Kelly was barking orders and intimidating these people and giving threats and all that bull crap, they turned a blind eye to all of these leaks that were allowed to occur, all of the information being allowed to be passed between some of these bad act witnesses. And to this day, people still don't recognize the significance in Robert Kelly's lawsuit against Tasha K and the BOP. You see, they can make all these calls to actions on these platforms, but in my opinion, if everything is executed properly and they bring the valid information that proves all the misconduct, like I said years ago, all the work they put out here to get this man convicted should be also applied to get this man vindicated, considering we busted all these stories wide the fuck open. Somebody make this shit make sense.